Hi. I guess I'm standing between you and drinks. Oh, there's a panel after this, so not so bad. So, yes, scaling AI, I wouldn't just say modern bank. I think I'll scratch modern bank because a modern bank, legacy bank, everyone is struggling with moving from proof of concepts to enterprise wide execution. So, for the next 15 odd minutes, let's try and see what are the main and some of the barriers. And again, I think it's a big discussion. We can't possibly go beyond scratching the surface on the mitigations, but we'll touch upon some of those. So that's me, managing partner within the FSI business of DXC. I'm based out of London. I've been with DXC for about 4.5 years. Before that, I've been mainly a banker and a management consultant. Some of the logos I worked for. So I'm not a deeply technical person. I come mainly from the domain side with experience of transaction of every sort, transformation of every sort. I think DXC I wouldn't spend too much time on. Gabriel probably introduced us. We are a company which has been around for 6 decades in various shape and form. We do a bunch of things across the technology spectrum, starting from advisory through to running mainframes and cloud and workspaces with everything in between. Our coverage is across the whole of what you'll say banking, capital markets, and insurance. Yeah, so being an ex-consultant, I'll quote some consulting firms first. So according to Statista, we are seeing that AI spending in FSIs is growing at a rapid pace with a CAGR of about 29-30% over 2023 to 2028. So a lot of money is obviously going into transformation through AI. Many use cases have been identified across the customer interface, the front office processes, operations, risk and compliance, technology, and we've been hearing about some of those over the course of today. And if you look at some of these stats, it's interesting. According to a study by BCG, they're saying that the gap between banks, which are adopting AI at scale, versus those who are not, who are playing around with POCs and small use cases, might grow as we go into time. So by 2030, you can see that banks which are adopting AI at scale will have a 30% uplift in profitability. However, AI is not a silver bullet. We heard a number of times today that AI is just an accelerator, and you should have the right framework, the right governance, the right compliance and risk frameworks to make it work. And of course, people and training comes with it. So again, so this is a bunch of stats from various sources, including our own advisory business. And we see that most of the banks struggle with ROI around investment in AI. So as you see, 60% of CFOs, as per Gartner's study, they said that digital investments are underperforming in terms of profitability and efficiency gains. They have challenges of integration and scaling. Implementation is getting delayed. Business cases are unclear, which I think is linked with the ROI metric. The regulatory landscape is very complex, and they're all struggling to make sense of all the interconnected regulations which they need to be cognizant of. And then lastly, organization resistance and talent shortage. So I think there are many bankers in this room. I hope you'll all agree that these are common problems which you face, so not new. Now the big problem, the elephant in the room. And so this is a distillation of what I think we are seeing across our banking and insurance customers globally. So while banks are increasingly being able to deploy the simpler, low-value use cases, they are struggling with the high-value, more complex use cases and building them at scale, right? And why are they struggling? So this is what we will investigate in the next few slides and touch upon what they can do to mitigate those. By the way, anyone disagrees with this? Like those of you who are coming from within banks, that while you are probably being able to deploy the simpler use cases around summarization, chatbots, etc., it's a whole different ball game when you're trying to, for example, automate in a agentic way a whole KYC process or transaction monitoring, right? Anyone disagrees? Probably not. This is obvious. Yeah, so it's a high value use cases that is the challenge, and the barriers are high. So low, simple use cases which are low risk, low value, drafting and templating, summarization, knowledge retrieval, chatbots, easy. You're doing it well. However, when it comes to processes like credit decisioning, dynamic portfolio rebalancing, post-trade reconciliation, KYC, etc., it's a hurdle. So what are the challenges? So we see 9 key barriers to AI scaling and performance. Cost and ROI, defining those. Operating model, so what is the right operating model for deploying AI in an enterprise at scale? Talent and culture, having the right people with the right skills, in-source versus outsource. The risk and regulatory compliance, fragmented data and quality. We have been hearing about a lot of these today, so I'm not saying anything new probably. It's all coming together. Legacy systems integration, explainability and trust, security and privacy, and then a very complex ecosystem with number of players. Who do you use? How do we go about doing it? A question for the audience. Is there a 10th anyone can think of?
I'll add to this quickly.
Yeah, sure.
One is process redesign. That's also
Process
a big
redesign, okay.
Hello. Yeah, I see 2. One is process redesign. So all of these do count, and also redesigning the whole process before you just paste AI onto it.
Sure.
And the other one is actually AI literacy.
Okay.
And that's mainly in Gen AI, because if you see in other AI models or the traditional AI models, people normally see it as a black box. So they do not want to know what's happening. They just want to know what's the output. But Gen AI is very democratized. So everybody uses Gen AI in their normal life. Like, oh, they use a chatbot, figure it out. So the expectation also with Gen AI is higher than normal when you see these kind of processes. So it's expectation around what to really expect with Gen AI to create the performance that you want.
Yeah, okay. No, I think both very good points. And process redesign is an interesting one. It's almost step 0. Yeah, so I almost assume that you have done that bit and now we are talking of AI, but it's not the case in reality. So that great one. Anything else?
I think about something that is not here, but it is quite connected with with the person who spoke before me. I mean, this is the resilience within the organization. People are afraid of using AI. And if they admit they are not afraid, they still are, since there is still this legend that AI is going to replace them. And we see from every day that it is becoming more and more true. So, so in this particular box, I would also put resilience.
Fear of AI,
Yes.
almost. Yeah, I think it is kind of a bit within trust and explainability. At times, even users are unsure of where AI will take them, and a bit of talent and culture, which has an element of training in it. It's a totally different discussion on what AI will do to our jobs, and I feel it will be a shift. It'll be a shift. Some jobs will go, some will come. Anyway, that's a totally different discussion. You can argue that there could be yet another one around the AI life cycle, or which is often called AI SDLC, which is quite different from the traditional SDLC of deterministic systems. However, I would say that it actually consists of all of these. It's like bunching all of these together. So yeah, there could be some more. I'm not claiming this is all complete, but I think these are some of the key ones. So I'll run through these fairly quickly. So this is just like, those 9 issues, what the key impacts are and some mitigations. So cost and ROI. So this is something very real. When we talk to the banks, they always struggle. They say we want to do it, but we can't justify it to our management and I can't get the funding. And so how do we do it? So we always say that shift the focus from technology to business. Many a times, it's like, I'm not saying anything is wrong about tech. We all know that tech is important, but it's like tech guys who comes to us saying, hey, we want to do this, do that. Where is business? Oh, we are not really sure what business thinks about it. So that needs to change. It has to come from business. You have to tie it back to business metrics. You have to tie it back to the objectives of the organization at the highest level. And only then will you have a clear visibility of what the ROI is and what are the success metrics. Operating model, no organization-wide operating model to productionize AI. Yeah, siloed approach. Very federated, different parts of the bank is doing things their own way. No standardized approach. Tooling, processes, fragmented. They're working with different vendors, different consulting companies. There will be 4 of the big 4s all working within NatWest, different parts of NatWest doing their own thing. We see it all the time. So, of course, there's no one-size-fits-all, but many a time we see this hub-and-spoke model with the hub defining the standards, the infrastructure, the data standards, the vendor strategy, etc. And then the spoke will be the individual units who will manage the software development lifecycle, who will identify and own the use cases, and who will, of course, put together the teams. Talent and culture, super important one. So there's a distinct skills gap. I think every organization which is trying to scale up AI is facing this problem. And at times the hiring costs are going through the roof. I know of youngsters who are moving from trading to AI. They're making double the money, stuff like that. Very difficult to hire good people. And so this clearly impacts your capability and your ability to scale things up because you don't have the right people. So of course, the obvious one will be to upskill the workforce. And I think what you mentioned about the fear of AI can also be mitigated through this. Once the employees know that AI is an assistant, it will help them perform their task better. Of course, there will be some shifting of roles and FTEs and so on. But net-net, it's not like it'll replace humans altogether. Leverage your partner ecosystem and manage service models. Don't try to do everything yourself. And of course, very important, training a human in the loop layer to safely challenge the AI output. And we'll see later on that it's also very linked with some of the regulatory requirements around explainability and auditability. Risk and reg. So I think these are probably the 4 most important regulations which are driving adoption of AI, at least in EU, the GDPR, EU AI Act, DORA, and MRM guidelines. Explainability, auditability, fairness, these are becoming critical buzzwords. There are new risks which are emerging, like algorithmic drift, data poisoning. Again, I'm not going into the definition of all this, probably you've all heard about it. So there has to be new ways of tackling this risk. So your traditional risk appetite, your risk and compliance frameworks, the controls that you deploy, they will all change. You have to align with the regulations and their requirements. You have to embed responsible AI frameworks for things like bias monitoring, explainability, SHAP and Lime are just 2 mechanisms to do that. Just an example, you have to do your threat-led penetration testing, which is one of the DORA requirements around testing for your AI applications every 2 to 3 years, depending on the type of organization you are. Fragmented data, very well known. Legacy data structures missing, data quality is inconsistent, limited real-time data. This is one of the biggest challenges. We process things in batch. How do we get data real-time? So again, You have to have an enterprise data strategy to overcome these problems depending on your exact situation, building data lake houses, unified data platforms, standardize your data models, data lineage, real-time data pipelines with streaming architecture using things like data virtualization. Sorry, that should be event-driven pipelines. Legacy systems, another super common obstacle. So my monolithic core is unsuitable for deploying AI. How will I integrate AI into my existing mainframe, largely on-prem infrastructure, slow batch processing, as we discussed. So again, there's a whole set of approaches which you can deploy. And the most obvious one is to decouple your AI from your legacy core using APIs or microservices. It's also called your wraparound layer. So you have your core in the middle, then you have integration layer all around. And there are a lot of these vendors like Boomi, others who does this for you. And adopt a hybrid cloud or cloud native architecture, moving the AI compute into cloud while you retain your key operating processes in your core. And lastly, very important, when you are moving to large-scale AI deployment in a situation where you have a legacy core, start small and scale up gradually. Don't try a big bang approach. Trust and explainability. Now, there is resistance all across the value chain. You have the regulators who you have to have on your side. You have your internal customers within your bank, like risk and compliance, senior management, who need to be assured that whatever you're trying to do is safe and wouldn't lead to a big legal challenge or a big sanction or reputational risk down the line. And then you have your customers who are also unsure whether using AI is safe for them or whether the outcome will be to their benefit. So this is really, really important. And again, there's a whole plethora of how you can mitigate this. I've just named a few. SHAP and LIME we already discussed, so two of the most common XAI frameworks which are used for explainability. SHAP is more common for more critical processes and helps you explain how exactly AI came to a conclusion. Building human-in-the-loop models, at least for the critical processes, you should have a human in the loop. It can't be all AI. Building clear audit trails and user-friendly interfaces and reporting for AI insights, right? Security and privacy. So again, I think trust and explainability and security go hand in hand. One leads to the other. So we talked about some of the emerging risks like data poisoning and algorithmic drift. You have to adopt a secure AI lifecycle through MLSecOps. So if you go through the MLSecOps principles, it helps you ensure that you are meeting all your security and privacy requirements. And pets are basically technologies which help you enhance your security. So federated learning, a good example of that is your predictive text on your mobile. So the actual model sits somewhere on a central server. They send a simplified version onto individual devices, and then it uses your data locally, and then it learns. So that's effectively what is federated learning. Differential privacy, homomorphic encryption, which basically means a model which can work on encrypted data, so it doesn't use real data. So these are all techniques for enhancing privacy of how your model learns and uses data. Ecosystem complexity, as we mentioned, that there are a lot of vendors doing a lot of different things. How do you select which is the best one for you? There will be integration challenges, so which are the vendors that are most suited for your infrastructure? And then, of course, there are issues around legacy and having the right terms and conditions. DORA requires you to have certain elements within your contract. So now you have to extend that for your AI vendors as well. So you have to have a clear vendor strategy. Buy, I think someone mentioned earlier, buy versus build versus outsource. Super important, and it has to be done centrally at the hub level, not at the spoke level where each unit is doing its own different thing. It leads to chaos. Open architecture, interoperable platforms, and you have to build internal capabilities for the critical and repeatable components. So don't outsource it to such an extent that you don't build your internal know-how and you don't build your internal human capital. Yep. Call to action. So we have the barriers at the top. And I think at a high level, this is what we are telling our clients to do. Identify your high impact use cases, develop robust business cases which are linked to your, not just to technology KPIs and technology objectives, but to your business KPIs and your business objectives. Understand the regulatory risk and compliance constraints. You often hear about compliance, governance, and resilience by design, which effectively means don't think of these as an afterthought and as a bolt-on. Start designing with these principles in mind. Build your use cases starting with rapid POCs and scale up iteratively, and then you build compliance, governance, and resilience by design, as I just mentioned. Deploy your use cases in production by making them enterprise grade. Monitor continuously, audit and improve, and then it's a loop. It's a feedback loop. You start again. Again, I'm not here to sell, but we in DXC, we have kind of services and offerings to help organizations achieve some of these objectives. Lastly, I end up with a couple of real case studies where this is a bank in the UAE, one of the biggest, probably the biggest bank now in UAE. So we very recently worked with them to set up an agentic process for post-trade reconciliation. It was a largely manual process where they were taking trade confirmations which were arriving in multiple formats through email, and then they were comparing them against Murex, which was the trading system they were using. And it was a very error-prone and delayed process, and we helped them automate that using a series of AI agents. And the other one is one of the big 4 UK banks. So we are still working with them. This is just one of the use cases where we used agentic AI to help them with querying and creating reports for their SME lending proposals. Yeah, this was used by, I think, Treasury as well as the corporate banking business. So I end with that. I think that was the last slide. It was a quick run through of a lot of different things, and we could probably spend a day on each of those 9. So by no means is it meant to be a complete and full view. Happy to take any quick questions. Remember, I told you I'm not a technologist, so don't ask deeply technical questions.
Hi there. Maybe the elephant in the room question that hasn't actually been covered today, but is very much the concern of senior board levels, which is around geopolitics. And it's the point of where the concern of Europe with American tech. And it is the number one conversation that's driving the limitation of funding and acceleration of AI, and whether a wait and see is better. Is that something you're also hearing in terms of the concern, the fact that geopolitics is playing quite a lot?
Well,
and therefore, I don't think there's an answer to it. It's more of a comment.
Okay, with due respect to the Americans in the room, all the time. All the time. However, I didn't want to bring it up here to keep it a little away from geopolitics. So there's, of course, data sovereignty is a big thing, and it's not a secret. However, there is a pull away from some technologies because of what you just mentioned. Again, I'm not naming any names here. We probably know some of the companies we are talking about, but that's a very important one. Any other questions?
So what I see, especially around data governance, most of the guidance and the principles and the policies are around structured data. And with GenAI coming into the picture, it seems that these guidance and policies just break. And most of the use cases that we have also within the bank right now are based on GenAI. So when you want to have this data governance and policies around it, how do you see in the market these getting deployed?
Yeah, it's a very big challenge, and I think we'll discuss a little bit more on the panel around this. So when you look at data governance, of course, for the traditional machine learning models, it's perhaps at a stage where you'll say it's okay. For GenAI, it's somewhere in the middle. We are kind of catching up. But when it comes to agentic and autonomous AI and the usage of data, it's really a catch-up within most banks. I think, again, some stats which I remember, it must have been a Deloitte report which I read, that only 20% of banks globally polled by Deloitte say that they are comfortable with data governance for agentic. Yeah, so that kind of tells you that where we are as an industry vis-a-vis data governance for the more complex AI models. Yeah. Any last question? I know we are a little short of time, but time for maybe one more? Or not? Thank you.
Thank you, Dhrit, very much for that presentation and for teaching us all about all the challenges that we need to look out for.
Yeah.
Warm round of applause.